Before she plants a single eggplant seedling, an Amish woman over 50 has already been feeding her soil for months. No bags from the garden center, no labels, no instructions, no cost. Just a system built across decades and a garden that keeps getting better every year. The problem with eggplant. Eggplant is not a forgiving crop. It is a heavy feeder, which means it pulls more from the soil than most vegetables: nitrogen for leaf growth, phosphorus for root development, potassium for fruiting, and calcium to prevent the blossoms from dropping before a single fruit sets. Get the soil wrong, and the plant will tell you quickly. Stunted growth, yellowing leaves, flowers that open and fall without producing anything. Most gardeners solve this problem by buying fertilizer. Amish women solve it differently. Aged manure. The first and most important input in an Amish kitchen garden is animal manure, and on a working Amish farm there is never a shortage of it. Draft horses, dairy cattle, pigs, and chickens all produce waste daily, and that waste is collected, piled, and aged before it ever touches garden soil. Fresh manure burns plant roots. Aged manure composted for at least 6 months, often over an entire winter, breaks down into a dark, crumbly material that releases nitrogen slowly and steadily across the growing season. A University of Minnesota study found that a single draft horse produces approximately 55 pounds of manure per day. A farm running 10 horses returns over 500 pounds of organic material to the land every single day. By late winter, when the ground is still frozen and the garden beds are being prepared in her mind, an Amish woman already knows exactly where this season's aged manure pile will go. It goes under the eggplant bed first. Layered compost. Alongside the manure pile, every Amish household runs a compost pile fed directly from the kitchen and the garden. Vegetable peels, eggshells, coffee grounds, spent garden plants, fallen leaves, straw from the chicken coop, wood shavings from the barn, all of it goes into the pile in layers. Carbon-rich material like dried leaves and straw alternates with nitrogen-rich material like food scraps and fresh garden waste. The pile is turned periodically to keep it active, and moisture levels are managed by hand too dry and decomposition slows too wet, and it turns anaerobic and loses its value. What comes out of a well-managed compost pile after several months is humus, dark, rich, biologically active organic matter that improves soil structure, feeds beneficial microorganisms, and releases nutrients steadily for an entire growing season. An Amish woman in her 50s has been running this same pile in the same corner of her yard for decades. She does not measure inputs or outputs. She knows what finished compost looks and smells like because she has made it hundreds of times. Before transplanting her eggplant seedlings, she works several inches of this material into the top layer of the bed. Wood ash. Through the autumn and winter months, the wood stove in an Amish home runs almost continuously. It heats the house, heats the water, and in many kitchens, it is the primary cooking surface. What it also produces every single day from October through April is wood ash. Most households collect this ash rather than discard it, and for good reason. Wood ash is one of the most concentrated sources of potassium available in a garden setting, and potassium is exactly what fruiting crops like eggplant need in large quantities to produce well. Potassium regulates water movement inside plant cells, strengthens cell walls, and plays a direct role in flower and fruit development. Without adequate potassium, an eggplant plant may grow vigorously but produce few fruits, or produce fruits with thin skins and poor flavor. Wood ash also raises soil pH, which helps on acidic ground, and it supplies small amounts of calcium and magnesium. An Amish woman applies ash carefully and in moderation. Too much can shift the pH too far and lock out other nutrients. But a light application worked into the bed before planting costs nothing, requires no trip to a store, and makes a measurable difference in how the eggplant performs across a long summer. By March, when the stove has been burning for 5 months, there is no shortage of it. Manure tea. Once the eggplant seedlings are in the ground and growing, the feeding does not stop. An Amish woman who has been gardening seriously for 30 years knows that soil preparation before planting is only half the work. The plant also needs consistent nutrition during its growth period, especially in the weeks after transplanting when the root system is establishing itself, and again during heavy fruiting when the plant is drawing on soil reserves most intensively. The solution she uses is manure tea, a liquid fertilizer made by soaking a quantity of aged manure in a bucket of water for several days, then diluting the resulting liquid and applying it directly to the base of each plant. The process requires nothing beyond a bucket, water from the rain barrel, and manure from the pile that is already sitting 20 feet away. The resulting liquid is rich in soluble nitrogen and beneficial microorganisms. It absorbs immediately into the root zone without burning the plant, and because it is diluted, it can be applied weekly without risk. Commercial liquid fertilizers sold in garden centers are designed to replicate this same effect. An Amish woman has been making the original version for as long as she has been gardening. She applies it every week through June and July, when the plants are setting their heaviest fruit loads, and the cost of doing so is exactly what it has always been: eggshells. One of the most common reasons eggplant blossoms drop before producing fruit is calcium deficiency. Calcium is essential for cell wall development in young fruit, and when it is absent or unavailable in the soil, the plant aborts its flowers rather than carrying them through to harvest. Commercial growers solve this problem with calcium-based fertilizer additives. An Amish woman solves it with eggshells. A household that keeps laying hens, and most Amish households do, generates a continuous supply of eggshells year-round. These shells are collected, dried, and crushed before being worked into the garden bed at planting time and scattered around the base of established plants throughout the season. Crushed eggshells break down slowly in the soil, releasing calcium steadily over several months. They also have a secondary benefit. The sharp, abrasive texture of the crushed shell creates an unpleasant surface for slugs, which are a common pest on eggplant, particularly during wet summers. Slugs are reluctant to cross a ring of crushed shell around a plant stem, which means a single input is doing two separate jobs at once, feeding the soil and protecting the plant without any cost attached to either function. The shells come from the kitchen. The chickens produce the eggs. The hens are already on the property. There is no step in this chain that requires going anywhere or spending anything. It is the kind of efficiency that only becomes visible after years of paying close attention to how a farm actually works. Cover crops turned back. The eggplant bed does not sit idle between seasons. An Amish woman who manages her garden seriously plants a cover crop in the same bed immediately after the last eggplant harvest in late autumn. Common choices include winter rye, crimson clover, and hairy vetch. Each of these plants serves a specific function over the cold months. Winter rye produces a dense root system that prevents soil erosion and suppresses weeds through the winter. Crimson clover and hairy vetch are nitrogen-fixing legumes. They host bacteria in their root nodules that pull nitrogen directly from the atmosphere and convert it into a form the soil can use. By the time spring arrives and the cover crop is cut down and turned into the soil, the bed has been actively enriched for 6 months without a single additional input. This practice is sometimes called green manure, and the effect on the following year's crop is measurable. Soil that has hosted a nitrogen-fixing cover crop through the winter contains significantly more available nitrogen in spring than soil that was left bare. It also has better structure, higher moisture retention, and a larger population of beneficial soil organisms. The Amish did not invent cover cropping. Farmers have used it for centuries across many cultures, but in an Amish kitchen garden, it is treated not as an advanced technique, but as a basic step, something an older woman teaches a younger one without making any particular point of it. It simply belongs in the cycle. Mulch, moisture, and timing. By the time an Amish woman transplants her eggplant seedlings into the prepared bed, the soil beneath them has been fed with aged manure, enriched with finished compost, amended with wood ash and crushed eggshell, and rested after a winter cover crop. What happens after transplanting is equally deliberate. The first thing she does after setting each seedling into the ground is apply a thick layer of straw mulch around the base of the plant. Straw mulch does several things at once. It holds moisture in the soil between waterings, which matters enormously for eggplant. Inconsistent moisture during fruit development causes misshapen fruit and tough skin. It regulates soil temperature, keeping the root zone warmer on cool nights and cooler during the heat of the day. It suppresses weed growth, which reduces competition for the nutrients already present in the soil. And as it breaks down slowly across the season, it adds organic matter back into the top layer of the bed. The straw comes from the barn. It costs nothing. Watering is done early in the morning, at the base of the plant rather than overhead, using water collected in rain barrels from the roof of the house. Overhead watering on eggplant increases the risk of fungal disease on the leaves. Base watering delivers moisture directly to the roots without wetting the foliage. This is not a technique she read about. It is something she learned by watching what happened when she watered the wrong way probably 30 years ago and adjusted accordingly. What the harvest looks like. An eggplant grown in soil that has been genuinely prepared, not supplemented at the last minute, but built across years of consistent organic management, produces differently than one grown in depleted ground with synthetic fertilizer added to compensate. The fruits are heavier, the skin is glossier, the flesh is denser and less bitter. The plant continues producing over a longer period because its root system is drawing on deep, stable fertility rather than a concentrated surface application that exhausts quickly. An Amish woman harvests eggplant when the skin is still fully glossy and the flesh gives slightly under thumb pressure. She never pulls the fruit from the stem with a sharp knife, leaving a short section of stem attached. Harvesting promptly and regularly encourages the plant to set more fruit. Leaving overripe fruit on the plant signals it to stop flowering. The harvest from a well-managed bed is not just consumed fresh. Eggplant is sliced and dried for winter storage, pickled in brine using the same method her mother used, and in some households preserved by canning. Nothing from the garden is wasted without reason. The seeds of the best-performing fruits are saved, dried, and stored in paper envelopes labeled with the variety name and the year. Those seeds go into next year's bed. They carry the genetics of a plant that performed well in this specific soil, under this specific climate, on this specific farm. Over many generations, the variety adapts. It becomes, in a sense, a variety that belongs to this garden and to the woman who has been tending it for decades. No price tag. What this document describes is not a collection of gardening tips. It is a system, and the most important thing to understand about that system is that none of its components exist in isolation. The aged manure feeds the soil. The compost adds structure and biology. The wood ash supplies potassium. The manure tea provides soluble nutrition during the growing season. The eggshells deliver calcium and deter pests. The cover crop rebuilds nitrogen through the winter. The mulch holds everything in place and adds to the organic layer as it breaks down. Each element supports every other element. Remove one, and the others compensate. Run the full system for 20 or 30 years, and the soil becomes something that a bag of fertilizer cannot replicate: biologically active, structurally sound, and fertile at depth rather than just at the surface. An Amish woman over 50 did not arrive at this point through study or planning. She arrived at it through repetition. She has done these same things, in this same garden, through every season of her adult life. The knowledge is in her hands as much as in her head. She knows when the compost is finished by the way it crumbles. She knows when the eggplant needs water by the way the leaves sit in the afternoon heat. She knows when to harvest by the sound the stem makes when she presses the fruit. None of that knowledge costs anything. None of it can be purchased. It accumulates the same way the fertility in her soil accumulates slowly, consistently, and without anyone paying particular attention to how much it is worth until the day someone tries to start from nothing.